The day's finally arrived. Bitcoin nearly at a new all-time high, but if we're in Aussie dollars, it's hit the new all-time high. New Zealand Pacific pesos, new all-time high. And for many other currencies around the world, Bitcoin has hit a new all-time high. So it's only a matter of time until Bitcoin gets there for the almighty US dollar. Now, in today's video, I'm looking at tipping points. We have Bitcoin to get through. We have the total cryptocurrency market cap, the true altcoin market cap to look at as well, and some of the signs of the US dollar or USDT breaking down, which we know is a most likely good news for Bitcoin and altcoins for prices to start going up. So some levels to look at there. Plus Solana, Sui, ETH, and the traditional markets. Thanks for stopping by. Hit the like button if you want to see more of this so it pops up in your news feeds. And of course, if you are new here, subscribe to the channel so that you see each of the day's analysis build upon the previous day. As we've looked at for years now, we've been following the markets, looking at good times to exit and good times to enter just based on our signals that we use. Like you guys were here in March, we had signals that suggested it wasn't a great time to be getting into the markets, and hopefully it saved you a lot of money in preparation for the next move. Now, of course, I've been talking about it for a while that this is building up for the next stage. I'm much more longer term, so I'm happy to sit in a position for months and wait for that next move to the upside. What I guess the longer term investors do, your Warren Buffetts and those sort of guys, they'll wait for the positions. Now, I'm not Warren Buffett, I get it, and I did compare myself in that regard, but it's more along the lines of the plan. So if you plan to trade your portfolio in that sense, longer term moves, then you found your home. It's your home of macro cycle analysis. As I said, we're covering Bitcoin, cryptos, the stock markets, and the real estate cycle. It's basically what is driving everything right now, which is why we're looking at the 18.6-year cycle and why I've suggested that we're going to see higher and higher prices. A lot of things hitting new all-time highs as more liquidity comes into the market. Now, this is one of the things I looked at recently. Everyone is slowly getting used to the up only. And essentially, well, we're basically at that stage now, but more and more people will get used to it as we lead into the tipping points for the altcoin markets, which I guess is what a lot of people are interested in because it seems like it's easier gains to be had. And we'll start to reach some of those tipping points in the coming days. So I want to get into a little bit more a granular look here at the analysis on these charts. But I just want to give us a heads up for the next week and a half as we lead into the US election. Heaps of announcements coming out for the US, high impact events, which is what this red signal is here. And you've got your CPIs for Oz. You got employment stuff for the US, unemployment claims, the obviously US election next week, November 5th. And obviously for my dates here it is presidential election. For Australia, we have our cash rate coming out. And then for the US, they also have their federal funds rate coming out. The same thing. It's your interest rate announcements. Okay. So lots of stuff coming up next week, which is why I think there is a slight chance that we start to see the market just stall for a little bit. I'm not calling any sort of collapse from this point. Looks like things have still got a lot longer to go. This in particular is also suggesting that we have more to go, more continuation signals from insiders. Who doesn't love a good insider story here? The stock market remains constructive on a trend following basis. My theory, if you're new, I want to see everything be going up together because at the end of the day, it's a liquidity game. Bitcoin needs more of that liquidity in order for it to go up. Same deal for gold and other asset prices, right? There's not really any sort of need for the majority of this stuff. Yes, I hear you with Bitcoin and the decentralized currency. I'm talking about the other 2 million other altcoins out there which really don't have any sort of use, but we're seeing more liquidity come in. So back to the insider story, a variety of indicators have flashed continuation signals recently. These signals suggest that investors continue to give the bullish case the benefit of the doubt, which is what I'm doing and what I'm sharing with you here on an almost daily basis. That's your signal for liking. Anyway, the data here, the decline in insider buying is not automatically bearish. So underneath this red line, you can see insiders not buying as much. Corporate insider buys for the NDX, so the NASDAQ, the NASDAQ indice. Now in this next chart, corporate insider selling. NDX insider selling remains relatively light. So they might not be buying, but they're also not really selling, which is what we looked at in yesterday's video, where you see this indecision, which at least history has shown more often than not leads to consolidation before a continuation of the trend. So here it is as well. This is where those signals will come up on the red dots. So you can see the market continuing higher. Sometimes it's near those lows. That was COVID there, but then, well, it boomed from that point. Again, at the low in 2022, 2023, another good one right there. And here we are again, breaking into new all-time highs. So this signal 9 times in the last 14 years. I mean, who doesn't love a guarantee of increasing prices? Of course, I don't think that's always going to be the case. But at this stage, 100% of the time, 6 and 12 months later, stock markets were higher. In this case, NASDAQ 100, and you would expect the S&P to also be higher 6 or 12 months later, just based off this alone, which I don't suggest you do. You don't base your plans off one signal alone. It's a combination of everything that we have going on here, and you have your signals to get in and out of the market. So in terms of how far it went up, the average max gain, 28% for the NASDAQ from this point. Okay, that's over 12 months. 6 months, basically half that at 15%. Average max loss, which is different to the maximum drawdown. You could have a drawdown of 30%, but the average times it had a loss in that period was about 7%. So keep that in mind as well. There's going to be volatility ahead. Essentially, good times ahead based off this one alone. But as I said, building upon each of the other signals and data points that we reflect on in each of the videos. S&P 500 E-mini futures has also put in a higher low on the 29th. This has been really interesting to track for the month of October because it's essentially pointed out the lows and the highs in the month and then the higher lows. There is the 29th. So we still have 2 more days. This could completely come undone in 2 days, but it doesn't seem like it. The probability suggests that it probably won't. So here's a low, 22nd. There's your dates down below. Next one, 25th. Higher low, 29th. And then starts to close higher. Well, what has the S&P done? 8th, 17th for a peak. Where is the top here? 16th. So we're not trying to get the exact timing here, but it's pretty cool to see this in advance. Remember, this was posted in September. So next low, 23rd. Well, it said 22nd, so spare us a day. And then 29th is coming at a higher low. So the swings and the movements have been basically on point here. Let's see how we go over the next couple of days. NASDAQ also pushing higher. Pretty big moves up there. A lot of the tech stocks are at all-time highs or getting very close to hitting new all-time highs. The NASDAQ is now just 1.3% away from another new all-time high. The Dow Jones is also trading above 42,000, so seems to be holding some support here. And if it does come back, then we just look towards our 50% levels. The first one I'd really look at is right here, 41,800, and then back to the yen low, the big fearful day where everyone said we had to have a recession again. Nonsense. Basically back to 41. So overall, the markets are still looking fine. We haven't seen any major breakdowns, like breakdowns of these levels at 38K for the Dow Jones and basically back here at the yen and Middle East conflict, so somewhere around 5,000 points. That would be a bit of an issue going forward for the market. So there's some beginnings of invalidation levels, but so far it has not occurred. Now the bottom 2,000 stocks also hanging out at their recent highs and holding above 50% levels, so important support levels. I find these far more valuable and useful than moving averages. They tend to work a lot better for basically all markets, but obviously you use what works best for you. And of course the VIX is lower highs, higher lows. I want to see it get back underneath 17 over the coming weeks and months. And that's essentially what I want to recap with you guys for the traditional markets. We haven't seen any sort of signs that the winner's curse is ending, that the everything bubble is slowing down yet. And once that happens, then I'd be looking towards some sort of collapse after that point. In which case, this is all going to be up. It's a bubble. Real estate's going up, stock market's going up, commodities going up, Bitcoin, crypto going up. They are not all going to peak at the same time. I'm just going to throw it out there for now. I suspect these will peak first, and maybe real estate, and then the stock markets, because you've got a lot more different markets in the stock market. So real estate will sort of peak, and then stock markets continue up, and then it all sort of comes down together. But that is somewhere around here, somewhere after about that 2026. Time to go. We've talked about that. Let's get into Bitcoin, which is what everyone is waiting for. This was the call back then. So it worked, the 3-day rule, and we saw 3 days down from a significant top. So what I'm saying here is now that we've seen it work in real time, at the time I showed many other examples of it working at peaks and at lows to call turns. Keep it for the next turning point. Maybe we see another peak in the coming months. And if this comes up again, don't brush it off. It is going to be vitally important. What can happen, and I talked about it at the time, is that you see 1, 2, 3. That's a down day. This green one is a down day, lower highs, lower lows. What can happen is you see it come up and just break that top and close back underneath it. And then that is another weak signal. That's a weak signal again, but we'll obviously see a ton of excitement because it's broken to a new fresh high. But you've got this signal in the background. And if it breaks underneath and holds, that could be a downside. But what the hell am I doing talking about more downside when we're about to break to new all-time highs? What you guys might know is that I want to teach and educate on these rules and these indicators so that you can use them to your advantage come the next peak. I think we've got a lot further to go up, but if you're prepared for any sort of corrections in the future, it could be 6 months away, then that could help you take the profits and not get caught up, because at those times, those peaks, there is the majority of people think there's just no chance of the market coming down, but the signals start to show up time and time again. All right, so breaking points, tipping points, that's what people want to know about right now. We've broken past the 69.4 and Bitcoin's obviously come up a little bit here, but this is what I want to have a look at. Time frames, tops to tops, roughly this sort of 30-day period. 28 days from top to top, 27 from top to top. So clear it up. There you go. Tops, tops, tops. We're at a timing point around now. There's 32. Okay, so we could break a little bit higher here and then chill out for a bit. I'm literally just looking at times where the market has been topping and bottoming. 31 days to the next low, 32 days to the next low, 34 days to the next low. So if we do top and start to come down, well, that might only last until the end of next week, so after the election. So it's really not a long time there for any sort of consolidation or pause, okay? This might go higher, I don't know, but I'm just looking at these timeframes that have been working for the last 3 to 4 months so far. And this 30-day thing seems to come up quite often for BTC, as you guys might remember from the last move up, and you start to look at these other moon cycles and things like that. These movements happen quite often. It doesn't mean it calls the top, as you can see here. It's just a top in the trend. In this case, it was a sideways consolidation. So that's the shorter term. Big things are still happening. We had the breakout, the diagonal downtrend breakout that I was looking at. Retested that breakout and then a big move to the upside. Weekly higher swing lows, like this chart here, with big red arrows telling you the market's likely going up higher. You had a lower low, a low, another lower low here, a lower low here, and then 2 little higher lows started to form in September, October of last year. And then this comes out, big pump. We had exactly the same weekly pattern, and we're on this move here. The big pump hasn't happened yet. I suspect it will, but I don't know if it's going to play out exactly like the last one. And that just looks like this, right? You're looking at this low to this top, and people will just start projecting this right off the low, saying it has to do exactly that sort of thing. Who knows if that's exactly what's going to happen? It could. You get a bit of a retest of the highs and then it starts to push again. But I'm not trying to play that game. I just want to keep following the trends themselves. The weekly swing tops have been breaking. The Gann swing indicator is a fantastic use of getting into the markets and then positioning your stops underneath these levels. So overall, the pattern was there. We watched the pattern play out and we're still there now, and it's still moving as we as I'm filming. We're at $72,000. Next seems to be this next pump. So we start to move into that tipping point. There's a couple more Bitcoin charts I wanted to show you. So 7 months of sideways consolidation, almost 8 months, as I looked at in a post recently, and what's happened in the past after these big long consolidations. 6 months, then there was a big move to the upside. We're into the 7 month. Seems like we'll probably see another big move to the upside, and counting from the swing bottom low. That's where I like to count these moves from, so that you have an accurate measure of trying to forecast where a next potential top comes in. So 6 months takes us out to about February 2025. Last time we had an 8 month, and then there was a breakout, reconsolidation, and then another breakout. We go back to 2019. There was a 4 month consolidation breakout, and then there was about a 5 month dump, and then a reaccumulation of another 5 months, big breakout. That time it lasted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Got into the 7th, and the 7th month was basically the pullback into May. So a long time consolidating, 6 to 7 months to the upside. Let's have a look back to the previous cycle. So we're trying to figure out how long can these moves last after these tipping points occur. And the tipping point is basically the start of the breakout. We're looking at 8 months, 6 months, 6 months. The breakout period, if I look at it from the swing bottom, that's a long time, 16 months. And then the next swing bottom takes you out to 9 months. So pretty long time here, with several of the consolidation patterns overlapping, or just having a small pump, testing the previous one, and then moving out of the consolidation. So if we just take the shortest one here, there is 9 months, but you did have multiple consolidation patterns on the lead up to that point without any, I guess, real significant breakout like we saw this time. So we saw a big move out and then a long consolidation. And then to the 2012-13 bull market, 6 months, breakout, 5 months, and then the breakout, and then another 5 months into the final top, which is basically 2 months. And then from this swing low to that top was 6 months again. So there's some reason to suggest that you would see something like a 5 to 7 month move from that low, and that low is August. 5 months takes you out to January, 6 months takes you to February, 7 months is obviously March. So I'll be looking for some sort of pause action in that first quarter of 2025, which I guess is what we've been looking at and talking about now for several months. Should this thing break out? Should this be consolidation and you get the breakout? So over to the total cryptocurrency market cap, all cryptocurrencies now. We have the hold above 2.2 trillion. You remember this, 2.2 trillion market is strong. Underneath it is weak. And then below 1.7, well, things are basically over at that point. And that was the 50% level of the entire move. So again, the Gann 50% level worked to an absolute T. Market moved up from there, put in a higher low in September when everyone else was freaking out like it was going to come down further. And then they freaked out again in October recently at 2 trillion. And it didn't get below that 2 trillion level. Pushed higher, higher lows, higher highs continue to form. And basically, where the next target is around 2.4 trillion, 2.6, 2.7. Tops there, tops and tops. The interesting thing to note now, looking at the current structure of the total cryptocurrency market cap compared to last time, is that the total crypto market cap is just 20% away from the previous old all-time high at this stage of the cycle. This one excludes Bitcoin, ETH, and stablecoins. And the major tipping point here is at 480 billion. And again, we're knocking on the door of that breakout. It is the 50% from this top to this low. So as you slice it through the middle, really good signs. Higher lows are all forming. You'd expect it to break out eventually, but we have the US election next week. So the 480 is an important level. It was also support before the market broke down, before the true altcoin market broke down from there. This was through January 22. So there's still some strong resistance overhead before there's clear ground. And above that, you've got 580. There are a couple of smaller levels here, but 580 is the big one with the 50%. And then your 650 to kind of 670, 680 billion. So if you just want those three numbers, 480, 580, 650, couple of levels to go before we get this major tipping point. So when does that happen? I've said something around days away. We're looking at the time frame from where we currently are to the US election to then what happened last time on the breakout. And this is your US election week. There was 2 weeks after that point. So 2 weeks later, it broke the tops and hit the first tipping point. This is the true altcoin market cap to get into your altcoin seasons and watch all your memes pump, right? So 2 weeks after the election is what happened last time. breaking those tops was a very key level. 1, 2, 3 tops, 4th time breakout. Remember, we used that signal on Solana recently. 1, 2, 3, 4th time breakout. If you've been following the channel, to trade in and out of, into your assets. And then of course, we'll talk about selling later. Tipping point, you've got tipping point at 180 billion. Again, a top, another top, and then the market paused before it broke out. So you had a couple of big tipping points in the market. That next one came about 7 weeks after the first, and you could run it all the way out to 11 weeks. So I'm saying 7 weeks because it broke out of this range and then made it to the next tipping point, and that took 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks until it broke out again. So 7 to 11 weeks after the first one. And if you wanted to have a measure from the US election, which is next week, well, basically 13 weeks from that point for the second. So let's bring it back. You've got 2 weeks and then 9 weeks. Okay, I know I've said a lot of weeks here. Let's put it down to dates. Somewhere around mid-November for the first one was last time, and then early January. So you could be looking in that December period, of course, for any sort of breakouts from that point. The key level that we're watching now is 480, and as I said, 580 billion before you get to the 650. So within this period of the next couple of months, you'd expect, just based on the previous cycle, that for this to get over into that altcoin season, those big pumps, that you'd see it happening over this coming 2 months, basically a breakout of the altcoins. Now, everyone's sort of like hyped up thinking it's just going to happen, it's going to happen. So you'll know that if this altcoin market gets above 480, that's your first signal that the tipping point is coming. That's the first major tipping point here in the short term for the altcoin market. Next, you'll be watching over those coming 2 months, do we get to that 580 billion, that 50% level? So there's your second warning that it's coming. Your third and possibly final warning before you get to the peak is 650 billion. It's the previous monthly lower swing top. It's the previous top in this current bull market. And so if you do start to see a breakout of those levels, that would likely be one of the final warnings before you get any sort of significant move. With that in mind, I wouldn't be going crazy thinking that everything must pump from that point. This is obviously led by the larger caps because they're going to have the most effect on the altcoin market overall. If you got to these timeframes and you weren't seeing any price action get above key resistance levels, in particular getting towards that peak around 1 trillion, hold your horses. Don't try and blow your load all at the one hit, because it might need more time to cool off again until we get to that next move. I just want to prepare for all scenarios because I don't know what happens after that. It's a game about preparing for the risks and rewards. The reward is the upside. The risk is it takes too long to happen, and basically the energy dies out of the market and you've got to wait again. So that's the preparation for these two things. Now, the final thing here before I get to some of those alts is the USDT dominance. So we've obviously been tracking this now for months. We saw the breakdown in October 2023, and then it retested the 50% level. Now it's finding resistance, which means if this is going down, money probably coming out of USDT into Bitcoin and altcoins, and we're on that verge again of the diagonal breaking down, which has just happened overnight. So this pretty much is going into mostly Bitcoin, and then eventually some of those stronger alts. So the trend line is breaking, which means we're probably going to see more money flow out. We can now get rid of this level because it's done its job. It hit the 50% and came back down, which told us that we're probably seeing more money go into Bitcoin at this stage. And then we got to look to the next support level. So as I talked about with this, if the true altcoin market cap, if we do get to these higher prices and time runs out, you can look to the USDT dominance to see if this is finding some support at previous significant support levels. So trendline breakout, we can move this out of the way now. You can see this level, depending on what time it hits this level. So it could be, if it hits it in the next few days, it's around 4.2. And with time, the longer it takes, well, then the higher the level is. Could be 4.3, could be 4.4 if it takes until February, which I don't think is the case. But nonetheless, 4.2, 4.3% of USDT, that starts to hit, we could see some support here and profit taking from Bitcoin and altcoins. And do note that this has basically held the Bitcoin crypto markets up for its entire history, that level. So every Bitcoin top and intermediate top has come at or around that diagonal. So something else I've noted here is that this would expect, if you're going to follow this indefinitely, just taking this at face value would suggest that USDT dominance is always going to increase. But this could be with the whole, lower highs, and I've got higher low here because that's for the Bitcoin market. You can see from September 2023 before Bitcoin took off and USDT dumps. This could suggest that the USDT dominance is going to have a major breakdown. Now, this could be for a future video, which I think this video is out, it's out of this scope. For future videos, if that were to happen, the positive, we get more money into Bitcoin and cryptos. The negative, over the longer term, maybe 6, 12 months, maybe 3 months, I don't know, could potentially mean that something happens to USDT. Could be the FUD. Am I spreading FUD? I'm trying not to because I think there's still good things to go. But if the USDT dominance goes out to nothing, well, that's not good for the space either. You definitely need to see money into USDT. So I don't know. I don't know what happens in the future. I'm not a fortune teller or anything like that, or they're pretty bad at telling the future anyway. But yeah, on the one hand, you do need to see this breakdown in order to get the pumps. On the other hand, it shouldn't break down too much where it becomes like a coin that no one uses, unless there is another stable coin that takes its place in the market. Maybe the US bans USDT and forces everyone to only use USD, and that takes a transitional period for that to happen, which pauses the market overall. There might be some consolidation that happens in 2025 for several months until you start to see people only trading against USD, like the USD pairs instead of USDT. That's just one scenario that could happen that scares the market. However, it's not detrimental longer term. Let's see what happens, okay? But yeah, I do think that we've got something to be concerned with here, as I said, with any of these too big of a breakdown. Solana and Sui to finish. We've got highs getting broken. We have strong volume, at least on Binance, coming through for the week on the breakout weeks. Good signs. Next resistance levels at 190 and then $210 as well. So far, Solana's looking pretty good. It's at its 96th week of this bull market, and I don't expect it to basically come to an end anytime soon based on everything else that we've seen. But yeah, I do expect some sort of resistance around 190. Could be days, could be weeks. I think more so in the shorter term, but a 210 could be an interesting one because it is also 50% of the entire range. What you want to see is it slicing through 50%. That is very, very strong, holding support and then going again. But of course, could be days away. All right, let's have a look at Sui as well, which has basically had a very, very strong bounce off this low at $1.60. So it hit the corrections that we've been watching. If you've entered, great, good stuff. Now you've got massive volume coming into play here as the market pushes up again towards the previous top at around $2.20. So hang in there. There's obviously going to be plenty of volatility here. You might think that you've missed out, but if there is many, many multiples to go above these levels, well then that's the range that you're looking at. You're looking at a significant range to enter between $1.40 and $2.20. That's the entry points, and then you continue to ride the wave. Like, subscribe. I'm interested to see what happens here with USDT. I think it's going to be a big one that we continue to watch. Hopefully we get an all-time high and I might go live. Let me know in the comment section. I'll leave a pinned comment there to see if we want to do that if we get to a new all-time high. Okay, enough from me. Have a great day and I'll see you at the next one.